Army Office 5521, we will check things that we did and try to move ahead. To reduce the noise. And we had an instrument very powerful, which is the scissor, that allowed us to cut things. And we will consider the movement that we had before, just to keep the pace of things that you are doing, and move as a sequential pattern as behavior. We could observe and indeed prove that the pattern as outlined can go in different areas. Can be my area corporate, can be my area government, can be my area state. The integration as distortion sets a conjuncture, because all conjunctures indeed is formed by the economical behavior of economical agents, from microeconomy to macroeconomy. You obtain the domain of top level at microeconomy and lead the macroeconomy by covariance as tax stimulus and illicit advantage. We had this on covariant thing. But all those distortions are on budget, have registry, and expose you by intention. And the intention got confirmed by continuity of purpose as thematic panel, and combined hoax at the intellectual speech, setting a theory of disgrace, which is covering the planning activity as a criminal scheme. We had the help of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, maybe having this review at the academic centers ruled by criminal intention. Criminals belong to the outlaw. They must come to the side of the law to receive protection. And as you can observe, I had my empty argument as value of my idea that will impact my premise, and this will be corrosive, combined or combined by corrosive purpose at the international system from microeconomy, with decision as effective application at the macroeconomy. For instance, transferring bubble as public contracts assumed all around to others have the payment. And if others do not have the payment, the bubble is inside the international financial system and the global economy. It's the idea of this model as the database sigma with the approach Sn, which can be a discrete movement or a movement with a pace a bit lower or an extreme pace. But in both cases, your purpose is changed. The premise or argument or even the projection, considering the patterns of distortions, despite minor but having the prevalence, projected to the future, and you have a causal complementarity. Illegal, it's a causal relation inside a criminal scheme covered by a intellectual speech or an academic institution. And you will consider this model, which is the segmentation as binomial distribution inside the geopolitical space, considering institutions as segment of power, distribution, and the binomial association with contracts, peers, and interconnection by budget, which will have this pattern as Venn diagram very explicit at the bank system. Europe is unable to have transparency on present time right now, despite the Ministry of Germany Finances, I think that he is trying the chair number one, claim this transparency. But Europe is unable to have this transparency, all Europe, including UK. Then, we observe that the liquidity trap under the audit gives me two patterns. The first one is my exponential behavior, which will have more attraction as interest despite the first cycle of activity, and my linear behavior, which indeed will be higher than the exponential behavior. I set the attraction, and after have the first cycle, I can offer the variables as association to obtain the advantage at the exponential moment, and I will control this as a scan or as an activity. But sometimes I have failures inside my linear projection, which indeed is a project, and I can have a shortcut here and decrease, but in this area inside the group that will be offered as asset to the international law enforcement, have the application of the law maybe, or consider have the trial as antitrust or something like this, all by law. Indeed, this allowed me to get the pattern of transnational organized crime on present time, macro environment with segmented distortion integrated, forming a conjunctural architecture of this micro distortion, which indeed is the macro behavior as criminal behavior with a previous causality as consequence of this type of association as outlined. And this can be as line and column. I can have this as debit and credit. If we had the crosscut as outline, indeed not inside the space, we could have this by colors, which is presented like this. If I have the pattern as my situation, and I have outlines, and those outlines are not red, are red or blue, it doesn't matter the color, as integration, as knots forming line, if not black, if it's outline, and you must review this. This pattern we could observe at the development and investment bank in Brazil. You can have this by open data, fraud management, white collar crime law, silence association, 13 of criminal law, illicit advantage, organized crime law, public corruption article 1 and 2, systematical failure integrated, 7423 item 1, blaming the distribution at the federative level since the cities until the union as federative state, all involved. All must be declared guilty by the antitrust justice, considering the discovery as mental disease, which is the use of instruments as financial control to commit crimes. Then we will have that this pattern indeed allowed me to understand the database sigma as budget observation considering conjunctures, and the crosscut of this conjuncture give me the alpha, which will be presented as the conjuncture up to sigma global environment distortion in two areas segmented, which can be finances and cyberspace or registry, giving the idea as fintech. This distribution, we will have in mind something quite simple, quite clear, that I can have, for instance, the ambition as those areas that I will put as an X or a cross, which is the router as distribution of institution or events around the globe, because I would like to take all these as square, but my perception of reality indeed didn't achieve this, and I set circle in the middle controlling the entire activity, and I'm targeting this space here, from here to here, from here to here, but indeed I will have only a piece of it. It means that I will have something like this. This interval is the space that I've got. So if I got this space, it means that this area here, which indeed is not covering the linkage as association, must be observed in a separated way, because this area here is a circle. And this association as circle presented as segment of square indeed is my line +1, which is the field square, with -1 as circle association. This area here we will highlight. And after highlight this area, we will consider check this, because if we observe this situation here, indeed is nowadays something that we must consider put under protection until have this value qualified. This value can be qualified as +1 inner value, -1, as a resilient thing as +1 inner value, +1, or a criminal inside this situation here that indeed is undercover and presenting argument or something like this. He is part of the investigation or the research or something like this. And the last thing, it will be a criminal as itself. And it's a possibility, because indeed we had systematical failures at the Budget Brazil integrated global events. Have a nice week.